All right, welcome back to Unleashed, the most legit Celtics podcast in the game, episode 102 today. And I know it's like super cliche to say, oh boy, do I have some takes for you today on my sports podcast. But in all reality, I have plenty of takes today, and we're going to jump right into it. No dancing, no beating around the bush. We're jumping right into it. We're talking, first topic here is Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge, and I guess overall just where we are assigning blame to this god-awful stretch of basketball that we've seen lately from the Celtics team. So let me dig into that, and then we'll get into some more of the recent news about Wyc Grousbeck and what he said, the owner of the Celtics, what he said about Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens recently. So in terms of assigning blame here, I blogged this on GuyBostonSports.com. Go check it out. But it's pretty much assigning blame to the certain layers of this team, front office, coaches, and then players. And my ranking was, from the most blame to the least, it was Brad Stevens the most, the players second, and then Danny Ainge third. And we got some comments saying, how the hell are you going to say Danny Ainge is third here? This team needs to be better. This team has so many holes. A trade's necessary. I totally agree with all that. And I would say Danny Ainge, the team that he's constructed, would have huge issues, and he'd be the biggest reason that this team stinks right now if they were losing to the top teams and the better teams in the league and they just couldn't get over that hump. But right now, as constructed, this team should be able to win all of these games they're losing pretty much. The Knicks, the Wizards, the Hawks, the Pistons, the Pelicans, all these dog water teams that the Celtics are losing to, I hate to break it to you, but they are constructed as of right now to the ability to be able to beat those teams. So, yeah, I agree. Danny Ainge's job isn't done. There's trades that need to happen. Things need to be shaken up. I agree. Grant Williams stinks. Semi Ojeleye stinks. This bench stinks. I agree. But even as constructed right now, this team should be able to beat the Wizards, should be able to beat the Knicks, should be able to not blow a lead to the Pelicans, 24-plus points. Those types of things, they already have a team that's good enough to prevent, and they're not preventing it. So that's sort of why Danny Ainge kind of fell to the bottom of my blame game, because it comes down to the coach, comes down to the players, and Danny Ainge, while his job is not done, he's done a good enough job so far to prevent this absolute terrible stretch of basketball. So I get there's probably going to be some disagreement there, but that's the reason. That is the reason. I hope that opens some eyes to some people, because the common conception is this team, isn't built nice. This team needs a trade. They need to sign someone. They can't go, 7, 8 deep without any sort of risk. It's all true, but that's not the reason they're losing to the Wizards. That's not the reason they're losing to the Knicks. It's like there's more than meets the eye. So I don't think a new GM or Danny Ainge getting his ass in high gear prevents these losses. I think there's something fundamentally wrong with the coaching, with how the players are playing under the coach, that type of thing. But where are we going with this? The recent news today was that Wyc Grousbeck, owner of the Celtics, came out and said, hey, we are not going to, fire Brad Stevens or get rid of Danny Ainge. These are our guys, and we're sticking with them. Now, everyone's like, see, there we go. We have our answer. They're not going to get fired. My immediate reaction, and I don't know if I'm just being cynical or pessimistic about this team, my immediate reaction is that shouldn't change anything. If we still think Brad Stevens is going to get fired, I should say you still think, because I'm not on the fire Brad Stevens train. I've made that clear in the show. I just want him to get better but still be the coach. If you still think Brad Stevens is get fired, I don't think that should change your mind whatsoever. What is Wyc Grousbeck going to come out and say right now? Yeah, we're thinking about firing Brad Stevens, or we're thinking about getting rid of Danny Ainge. He's not going to say that. He's going to make it seem to the press, to the media, on radio appearances, on TV appearances, he's going to make it seem like all is cool right now. No one gets this sort of notice that, hey, yeah, we're thinking about making a move, but I'm not going to say what. How infuriating would that be if you're Brad Stevens or Danny Ainge? So no kidding Wyc Grousbeck saying they're not going to get fired. Now, he might be telling the truth, but I'm just saying it's not like 100%, okay, there's our answer, end of the day, all of a sudden it's bookmarked, we don't even need to revisit it at all. Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge are safe. No, it's just Wyc Grousbeck saying they're not fired right now. And even if he were to be asked that and say, I don't really have a comment there, that's even worse than saying they're on the hot seat. So don't get too confident in his answer and don't let it dictate your thoughts on this. If you still think Brad Stevens should be fired, Keep that in mind, because I think it's pretty cookie cutter for Wick to say, nah, those are our guys and we're riding with them. Yeah, we're riding with them until we're not. He's not going to come out and say they're getting fired. He's going to say those are our guys, at least while they're with the organization. I don't see how that's hard to understand either. Like, why would he ever just openly shit on Brad, openly shit on Danny, or even, say that their jobs are on the line to a media or to a TV station or radio? Would never do that. Anyways, so there's that. There's my take on that. I don't think that, we should put much weight into what Wick said. I will say, if we're talking putting weight, it probably leans towards being the truth. I'm just saying it's not a hook, line, sinker, foolproof sort of quote there. It's exactly what he would say. But next up, I wanted to talk about this Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I don't want to call it drama, but apparently an NBA player says that they're not good enough to be superstar. I'll play the sound here. This is this is coming from the Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman podcast, and we'll just play it and let you guys make your mind up to it after I give my take on it.
Quote. Can I read you a quote from a player that played the Celtics recently?
This is Jeff Goodman talking.
Quotes. I'm not going to say who it was, obviously, but I was asking him last night a little bit of his thoughts of the Celtics, and he said, Tatum and Brown can't be your superstars and only do things that help their game. They don't get anyone else easy shots. All they know how to do is score. Doesn't help the Kemba. Kemba doesn't help their center. They don't help anyone either. They don't turn down tough shots to get another guy an easy shot. So teams are onto them. That's basically what he said. Teams are onto them. Load up on those two and live with them taking long twos.
So that's that. He pretty much says, and my biggest point there, if I'm paraphrasing, my biggest point is, and I tweeted out saying this isn't a good look for Tatum or Brown. Everyone's like, what do you mean? They facilitate, rah, rah, rah. One, can we be honest? They're not the best passers. They are, at the end of the day, they are guys that put the ball in the hoop, okay? That's not a bad thing. My biggest gripe with this quote from whatever anonymous NBA player that recently played the Celtics is saying that, they're not superstars or they're not leaders. That's a bad look for Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I don't care how you want to look around it. If your peers in the NBA, and this obviously is one example, and it might not even be true, but if your peers in the NBA can say, that guy just doesn't intimidate me. He's not a superstar. He's not a leader, whatever it is. Then who are we as fans to say, no, he's a superstar, or no, he's a leader? No. If there's an NBA player, if this is a true story, and, then I'll throw in the other necessity here that other NBA players have to feel the same way to make this like an issue, I should say. It's not a good look for Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum if people don't see the it factor in them. You know what I mean? Like, guys look at LeBron or Kawhi or KD, which are some names that Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum have been up against in terms of some people, the way they're playing as of late. Not as of late, but this year. No one looks at those guys and says, they're not superstars. You know what I mean? So I do think it's actually a bigger story than some people are making it out to be. I tweeted out the sound, I tweeted out the video, so you can go watch it yourself, and all the replies are, this is BS, it's probably not even true. It's one guy saying this, Jaylen and Jayson are good passers, which, again, it's not true. I get it, their assist numbers are up, but if you watch the game, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are not facilitators. Not that they should be either, though. I said that already. I want them to be scorers. Like, the step in their career right now is each going for 25 and combining for 50. That's awesome. They're 22 and 24. I think the facilitation can come at some point in their career, but I was talking more or less the along the lines of someone believing Tatum's not a superstar or Brown's not a superstar. That it's a big mentality, who has the edge on who. It's a mental game too. If Jayson Tatum's stepping on the court and his opponent is saying, yeah, I don't even fear that guy, I think that's an issue. Again, young, could change, and again, this video could also just be baloney, and also I get myself in trouble on the show, but I'm about to say something stupid. That Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman, two huge NBA names, what a drip of a podcast. And obviously I'm biased towards my show. I think we're animated. I think we actually bring the heat sometimes and can stay entertaining, and it's just one voice. I'm doing it myself, so that even in and of itself is a tough task, but I love doing it. That show, I'm like trying to skip through to pull the audio and whatnot. That show put me to sleep. like, even as I say that, we'll play this sound again. This is such like, and I hate this word, but this is such juicy information that Jeff Goodman's dropping, right? And just listen to the boringness tone of this. It's weird.
Here's a quote. Can I read you a quote from a player that played the Celtics recently? I'm going to read you a couple quotes. I'm not going to say who it was, obviously. But I was asking him last night a little bit of his thoughts of the Celtics. And he said...
All right. Enough ricochet shots, because in all honesty, I've corresponded with Jeff Goodman plenty. He's actually a really, really good guy. But maybe I don't listen to that show enough, because that show just put me to sleep. But let's keep it on the rails here, and let's not get ourselves in trouble. But I'm also right. But let's not get ourselves in trouble. What do we talk? Actually, we want to get to some voicemails here before we start discussing anything like that. So before I forget, let's get to some voicemails. If you're watching on YouTube, we do have the number on the screen. If you want to leave a voicemail for an upcoming episode, the number 617-302-6363. It's the official Unleashed line. You can leave a voicemail for next show, but let's play a couple here. I did listen to these beforehand. I know it's a no-no. I like to give my first reaction. But Google Voice is how we set this up. It gives a transcription of the voicemail. And this first one I looked at in the transcription, it's a little off, so sometimes the words are wrong, and it looks like people are saying words that if you listen to it, it was just a mumble or something like that. But this one was spot on, and I read this one, and I was like, I was at dinner or something, so I couldn't listen to it. I read it, and I was like, that has to be another voicemail that just is completely transcribed incorrectly, because that isn't right. I played it. The transcription was kind of spot on here. We'll play it, and this one just, hey, I've said it. We listen to all voicemails on the show, but this one is wild.
Hey, man, it's Christina from Pueblo, Colorado. Dude, you suck. You shit on yourself. Just kidding. The Celtics are the best damn team in the whole freaking world. So I don't know what the hell everyone's saying that they suck, because they don't suck. The Boston Celtics are the Chiz Bees, my friend, Chiz Bees. Anyways, yeah, you suck. Suck deeply balls. Just kidding. I don't know, maybe, sometimes. But yeah, Boston Celtics, you rule. You, on the other hand, you're cool too. Thank you. Bye.
I don't know if I should be insulted or incredibly flattered by that, but I do love the voicemail. I'm not going to lie. Like, somehow that is such a bad voice, or not even bad, I can't say that. Such a wild voicemail that it's now become one of my all-time favorite voicemails on this show. So I think you said your name was Christina in Colorado. As insulting as that was, I love that voicemail. Let's get into a real one, and then we can start talking here.
Hey, it's Stone from Time. I just wanted to touch on Brad Stevens real quick. I do agree that he needs to be a better coach, but for all the people saying to fire him, I just want them to name a better replacement that's out there right now.
It's a good topic we're going to talk about, actually.
That makes sense for the Celtics and is just better in general than Brad Stevens, because I really don't think there is one. So get your thoughts on that. Thanks.
So for a while now, I've entertained the idea of the best defense to the fire Brad Stevens theory is who you're going to name as a replacement. Like, I've thought that was the go-to answer, and I was agreeing, I was aligned, all that jazz. Up until recently, when the Celtics really have been playing poorly, I've started to say, okay, maybe it's not how I feel, but I'm starting to see the take of fire Brad Stevens, then who cares who you get, because of how bad Brad Stevens has been as of late. So the Stone here, you know, I love when you leave voicemails, man. I see on Twitter and everything like that. I totally get the name someone you're going to replace, but I almost think the way Brad Stevens has been coaching lately, who cares who replaces him? Like, and again, I don't want this to be confused with this as my official take on it. I'm just saying I'm hearing out the other side because it's starting to make more and more sense. Who cares who replaces this guy who is terrible lately? Like, that's a big deal. Who cares who replaces that guy? Now, this is where I differ, I should say, from this take, is that I don't think this guy that we're seeing is the real Brad Stevens. I think a lot of the flaws we're seeing are Brad Stevens' flaws, and he can get better. I've always said I want him to improve as a coach, just like Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown improve as players. I think a coach should be held accountable. But if this is the Brad Stevens that we're getting moving forward, or this is the normal Brad Stevens that we've seen as of late, then who cares who replaces him, because the guy is going to be no worse. Like, Brad Stevens lately has been a terrible coach. You're telling me you can't find a terrible coach off the streets? So there is multiple ways to think about it. Again, I have to make it clear, because the Brad, you know what, suckers out there that can't admit he's done anything wrong come for me whenever I say anything negative. I have to be clear that I don't want Brad Stevens fired. I want him to improve. But everyone that says fire Brad Stevens, who cares about the replacement? Every single game as of late, it's making more and more and more and more sense to them saying that. And I don't see how you disagree with that as of late. But it's a good voicemail. Again, if you want to leave a voicemail for next show or an upcoming show, it's 617-302-6363. But yeah, the Brad Stevens take, you can't fire him yet, right? Like, you can't, not even because of who would replace him. It's just because, okay, what's the point of firing him? To switch things up? I think there's much more wrong with this team. They're just in a downward spiral right now. I think they need players. I think Danny Ainge needs to make a move. I think the players they have need to play better. I think Brad Stevens needs to be better. I don't know if we're going to get any immediate fix to that, because you go and trade for, an Aaron Gordon, or a Vucevic is a dream name right now. Does that fix this issue? No, that fixes one part of it. It's putting a Band-Aid on something you need surgery on. So who knows where we're going to end up. I just think that there's way more than, I guess, truly meets the eye to this issue that's going on right now, because it's much, much deeper than getting a new coach, or, getting one extra player that could help you, anything like that. It's much, much deeper than that. But overall, the reason I don't blame the players here, if we're going to get into that, and this will be sort of a quick synopsis of what I blogged there. The reason I don't blame the players is because I truly believe they're led by Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown right now, and I don't think that that's fair. I know they're the best two players in the team. I know the NBA relies on your best players being the leader, but I don't think that Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are ready to be leaders yet. I don't think so. They're 22, 24, and still inconsistent, wildly inconsistent in times. That's why any of the player issues, I think obviously are focused on them, but I think it's kind of, I don't understand how, and let me play this hypothetical. I blogged this too in that article, so go check it out. If this team was firing on all cylinders and doing well, nobody would be calling Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown leaders. I honestly believe that. I think it would go to, the coach would get credit, Kemba Walker would get credit, Marcus Smart would get credit, all before Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown get the credit of being leaders. But now that the shoe's on the other foot, the house is burning down, everything's going wrong, it's such a cop-out to say, well, it's because you're led by two young guys. So that's where I don't like to say, okay, well, you know what, it's on the players. They have to be better. Which is something Mike Gorman said, and he's getting hate for now, too. He said Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown seem to be selfish. They have to learn how to win. It's not an individual game. I think the comment stemmed from bringing up that they both made the All-Star team, and Mike Gorman had said, well, yeah, it's perfect for them because you don't have to play defense. It's all about individual accomplishments, and he got ripped for it. Before we close out this show, let me defend Mike Gorman. Even though I don't agree that it's the players' fault, let me just defend Mike Gorman for a second. If any of us Celtics fans think that this team is driving us nuts, watching them game in and game out, having to talk about them, tweet about them, think about them. If any of us think that this team has disrupted our lives enough, think about the guy that's had to call these games play by play, act like each game is a big deal, when in reality you just watch them blow a game, blow a game, blow a game, blow a game. Mike Gorman has to do this literally, not game in and game out, but play in and play out as the play-by-play guy for the Celtics on the broadcast. I don't blame him for reaching his breaking point. I don't blame him for taking a shot at Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Where I do blame him is that that's the only issue with this team, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think if Mike Gorman really wanted to speak his mind, he would be able to call out the coach and whatnot. But I don't think, I think he was probably limited in what he could say, and it was coming during a game where the Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown just weren't feeling it and were not having good games. So it's like the recency bias, you're in the moment. But I think if Mike sat down and thought about this team, he'd have a lot more to say about it. I'm defending him in the sense that people are ripping him for saying something at all. Because he's the play-by-play guy, he's not supposed to have a take on this team. Isn't that why Boston's great? Isn't that why Tommy Heinsohn was great? Because he never bullshitted you? He just told you how he was feeling. Why can't Mike Gorman do the same? Because he's not the color guy? Because he's the player guy? Bull. You know? And it's different because Scal will say something and you're like, oh yeah, he's off base. But Scal, again, here we go. We're getting ourselves in trouble again on the show. We just did it with Jeff Goodman. I'm going to do it with Scal. Scal is a bullshitter. He is. He's the opposite of Tommy Heinsohn. He tries to be Tommy Heinsohn on the broadcast, but he's not. Scal will try and act like he watches every single dribble of every single basketball game. Oh, yeah, Mike, I watch a lot of this kid, and he is good. He's really good down low. It's like, yeah, the guy's 7'2", 300 pounds. No kidding, he's good down low, Scal. Way to guess that. But the fact that, he'll do that, and it's the obvious answer and the obvious bullshitter approach, that sometimes he does it when he's just so off. I think back to that Knicks game on a Sunday when he was like, Mitchell Robinson can't play any defense, or he's not a good, whatever it was. And then Knicks fans roasted him like, what? Mitch Robinson plays, like, what are you talking about, Scal? It drives me nuts. And again, this is another ricochet shot towards someone else on the show. Sorry. But it does drive me nuts that we have this guy who's trying so hard to say outlandish things or to have takes, but then none of them are backed by genuine thought or feeling or even knowledge. So I'm trying to defend Mike Gorman here, and then somehow we'll play this sound because it's fitting. Somehow had a ricochet shot towards Scal there. But anyways, guys, I think that is going to wrap up today's show a little bit quicker, but I wanted to get my thoughts on that Wick and Danny Ainge sort of news break out soon, how he's not going to fire Brad, how he's not going to get rid of Danny Ainge, that type of thing. But yeah, guys, I don't know. One last thing I'll talk about is how I'm like becoming insane here, and that I'm now more and more confident in this team because the Celtics hate has reached the level of, the national news. And I just tweeted out recently too, was that I said, it's kind of like when it's like, nah, it's okay for us to say that about our own. Like, we can say that. But when an outsider decides to puff his chest up and talk shit, now we got a problem. So I'm almost like reinvigorated, confident in this team because I want to prove the ESPNs and, the other national outlets wrong, even though I've been ragging on this team. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you're following on Spotify, subscribed on podcasts, and if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button as well. Catch you in the next one.